ICE arrests are up threefold. Nearly 40% of the people did not have any criminal record at all.
No criminal history. Had no criminal record.
DACA continues to be in legal limbo.
The targeting of people with DACA has intensified under Trump's second term.
They're ripping families apart.
Oh my God.
They took a U.S. citizen father out and left a toddler in the back seat.
Police, get up! Hands up!
We are getting treated like animals.
Get out of our community. We are sick of you separating families and terrorizing working people.
Welcome to Many Roads to Here, bringing the voices of immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers to a national conversation about migration and identity. I'm your host, Ashwini Chandrakant. Today we hear the voice of Vanesa Mendoza Cruz. Originally from Oaxaca, Mexico, Vanesa's family came to the United States without any documentation. Growing up as an undocumented child is not an easy feat. It often means navigating barriers in education, healthcare, and opportunity, while living with constant uncertainty about the future. Despite these challenges, many young people like Vanesa continue to pursue their goals and build lives rooted in resilience and determination.
Many times I had spoken to my kids' dad. I had spoken to my boss, Ernesto, and I said, if anything like this happens where I have to choose between staying in this country or going back home, I have to go back home for my dad.
This was 2024. Vanesa is facing a decision that could cost her everything she's built in this country. Years of hard work to support her family. On the other side is her father, back home in Mexico, struggling. To go means risking everything. It could mean not being able to come back. But to stay means something else entirely. But her story doesn't begin there. It begins years earlier, in a small town in Oaxaca, where Vanesa spent the first 8 years of her life, before borders became barriers, before leaving meant that returning might not be possible.
It is called San Miguel el Grande. It's in the municipality of Oaxaca, which is about 2.5 hours away from the capital of Oaxaca City. It was typical in Oaxaca, or at least where the little town I'm from, to have tin roofs. When it was windy, you'd hear it move. When the rain came, you'd hear everything, just from the raindrops to a bird landing on it. It created music in any way, whether it was rain or wind, or just the sound of our neighbors and the birds. The landscape from my hometown, when we were there, it was very dirt poor. There was a lot of just gravel roads. School was about 6 miles away. We'd always walk. I mean, it's really mountainous out there. It was very dry, very hot. But my dad would come to the U.S. to try to get some work and save some money for in his mind, buy land and build a home, which he eventually did. It was normal, yes, in the sense of going up north, not only to the U.S., but north, like to Mexico City or another city that had more opportunities, essentially. Part of why my dad ended up in Oregon was because he does have family out here. I don't think the dream was ever to fully stay in the U.S. It was just a temporary dream, right? Like, let's go, let's find a little bit more wealth to be able to build something down at home. The dream, I think it switched, right, once we were older and we weren't able to fully grow up next to him. And my dad loved us. So he had a conversation with my mom about whether, she wanted to stay down there and or come to the U.S., and she chose to come to the U.S. So I remember saying goodbye to my grandmother and my great-great-grandmother. I didn't think it was going to be like a long goodbye. To me, it was just something short, right? But then again, at 7, 8 years old, I don't think I really knew the concept of time. So all I know is that when we got to Tijuana, there was an arrangement that was made between my mom and this person that was going to get us to California. I don't fully know the details of it, but when we were in Tijuana, when we arrived there, I recall just seeing big trees. I mean, Oaxaca has big trees, but it was different than here, right? It was very, very green, large billboards, a lot of people, a lot of cars, something that I wasn't fully used to, even just in our own rural town or even in Oaxaca City. It was very loud, very vibrant in the sense of like just the cars, the music that the cars made. The temperature wasn't anything different than what I was used to in Oaxaca until we actually got to Oregon.
Vanesa had not seen her father in almost 3 years.
I remember entering the apartment complex and my dad just in the doorway, his dirty pants and his boots. He was a little heftier at that time. If my memory serves me right, he was bald at that time. His skin was sunburned, but in a like caramelized way. His hands were rough, but the moment that we hugged and embraced each other, he looked different, but I knew it was my dad. My dad was my safest place. I was the daddy's little girl. Anything and everything. I was always happy to be with my dad. He was a very loving parent. It was not someone that would tell us he loved us often, but when we heard it, we know he meant it. Christmases, he did his best to get us gifts. To him, it was always quality time that he enjoyed with us. He'd take us to the beach. He'd take us outdoors. He'd take us hiking. He loved nature, so that's what he always wanted to do. He'd tell us, we're going to go to the beach this weekend, and that means we'd have to be up by 5 a.m. getting the car ready because he loved to watch the sunrise. We'd stay until sunset. He was the happiest there, and he was happiest when we were all together. So the apartment complex that we lived in, that was the first to see in the apartment complexes that they owned. So I remember seeing some kids there. I didn't realize some of them were going to be my classmates. We entered school at the newcomer school, Vestal, which I believe it's still a newcomer school. So what that means is for kids coming, transitioning from a different country to the U.S., it's made to help us assimilate, essentially get acclimated to what the school system is. I did not speak any English. I didn't understand anything, so everything was very foreign to me.
In newcomer schools, dreamers take some of their first steps in a new country, learning English, building community, and slowly making sense of a place that once felt entirely unknown. For many undocumented children, school was the place where they started to envision their future.
In fourth grade, we were doing a world studies, right? Kind of learning about different countries and just kind of how they lived. And one of the conversations, my best friend at that time and we were discussing about how it would be awesome to travel together. And then her and her family planning, travel. One of the places they were looking into traveling was Japan. So she invited me. She's like, you should come with us, right? My mom can talk to your mom. You should be able to do that. Which in fourth grade, everything's possible. So when I talk to my mom about it, she lets me know that that's not possible given our status. What that meant was that we were here in the U.S. without legal documentation. And I didn't fully understand at that moment as to what that meant until she went into further explanation that, sure, we can travel out, we just can't come back in. And that, as a kid, it kind of connected a lot of dots as to why we did certain things differently, right? Why, when there was any talk about or any news about immigration, my parents became concerned, our routines changed, making sure we were always made hyper aware of be aware of your surroundings, about who you talk to, all these things. I felt like, at first, not fully knowing that, I felt like I could do anything in the world. But once I found out, I started to see that there were limitations to what I could do. School, I've always learned differently, so I stopped fully investing myself in it. As I've had an older brother and his older friends, and they start talking about what college is, or even their older siblings, what that would look like. And I started to understand that, there wasn't much support for us immigrant children. But once they started looking at college options, it was mainly just community college and or pay out of pocket. We didn't have the generational wealth or the money, the means to be able to say, yeah, we can pay out of pocket, for tuition. It was none of that. I started seeing the limitations that we had.
During 2010, undocumented students weren't eligible for federal aid. Even though there were around 1.8 million undocumented children at the time, their presence was mostly ignored. These children were trapped in the gray area of what the law dictated.
FAFSA's not for immigrant students. And then even then, if you were a legal resident, they'd still ask for your parents' legal status. And then that's where I was seeing a lot of other students kind of be deterred by it because their parents weren't legal. It was a system that was not made for us.
Unfortunately, Vanesa's home situation wasn't going well either.
Yeah, so it was around 2009, start of 2010, when my parents had finally decided to separate. My dad moved out of the house, and my siblings and I decided to stay with my mom because of where we were and the space that was there. It was really hard for him to see my mom because he was still very much in love with her, but understood their time had come to an end. It was hard for him to not have his family together anymore. And it was taking a toll on his health and on his mental health, as much as he didn't really believe in mental health at that time. So he made that decision to move back to Mexico, to go back home and try to find natural remedies for his health. And so, I would want to say summer of 2010, early summer, I believe, he made the trajectory back home. He packed his things and he went back to Mexico.
Since Vanesa couldn't afford college, her only option was to work.
I thought I could do workforce. One, I was already working. My mom had gotten me a job at Burger King, so I was working. And so I thought maybe workforce, something that I can learn quick, get a certificate for, and then just practice. So I had enrolled into cosmetology school. But by the time I was supposed to start cosmetology school, I found out I was pregnant. So around that time, I had to make the decision of whether wanting to stay in school, which again was going to be out-of-pocket expense for me, or start saving for my daughter. And so I chose to continue to work and start saving for when I had my baby. It was tough. I learned so many things about the workforce. That's the first time I ever heard that, I was allowed to pump because I chose to breastfeed. But Burger King wasn't equipped to facilitate that space for me. So I was pumping in a bathroom, which is not sanitary. So yeah, all these things that a lot of my community, a lot of undocumented parents don't know. All these accommodations, essentially, all these HR accommodations, not a lot of our community members take or accept it because it's not something that's very broadly spoken about. It felt hard in the sense that I had all these things to have to focus on with my daughter, right? I started to think about what are my limitations and how much can I fully invest in a future for her.
From the beginning, Vanesa was always trying to achieve more for herself, despite the limitations set upon her. But her grit and resilience didn't just start with her. There was a generational influence that started with her grandfather back in Oaxaca.
Yeah, so down in Oaxaca, issues between municipalities have always occurred, kind of those land grabs. Until recently, what I say, the activism in my family, it was something my grandfather enjoyed doing, being able to stand up and share his voice and his concerns. And so inspired by all the things that he did, inspired by him, taking up space and being there and fighting for what is rightfully within our municipalities, has always essentially encouraged me to ensure that I'm doing the same, whether it's internally within our family, but it's externally within our community. My grandfather, one night during the shifts of watching the land, he heard some commotion and walked towards it with a few other folks. Turns out the other municipality was kind of trying to overtake where they were, and my grandfather tried to stand his ground. Unfortunately, he was shot in the process and passed away. And it was around the same time my oldest daughter was born. So that always stuck with me, to know that my grandfather stood up for our community, stood up for what he believed in, and it did not scare him to fight for what was right. I mean, as I grew up in middle school and high school, I was very involved in a program called the Oregon Leadership Institute. It was a state-funded program that allowed us youth to be civically engaged, to start learning about our rights. Though I myself, as a undocumented person, I'm like, they're limited though, you know? That's what I always told myself. But started learning about that, started learning about the importance of being civically engaged, attending, policy hearings. We met with the mayors at that time, with counselors at that time, started to understand all these things. I was always involved in that, learning about, historic figures like Dolores Huerta. I went to rallies. I went to all these marches. I held up signs that expressed what we were here for, speaking up, who we were speaking up for. Everything that we're seeing today, it's what I was doing as a preteen, as a teenager, because I know it mattered. One of the chants was, aquí estamos y no nos vamos, y si nos echan no regresamos, which translates to, here we are and we're not leaving, and if you take us out, we'll come back. Or, I'm here because of my mother, or I'm here because of my dad's dream. I don't think it was a push, but it was more a reminder of where it was coming from. It's like it runs in my blood. It runs in who I am. And my grandfather was one of the people that helped raise me while my dad was in the U.S. It was just a gentle reminder, a gentle push of I'm continuing his legacy in that sense as well. I was trying to find ways to better myself, to do something more, to be able to, I guess, follow in the same dream as my parents, as my dad, to be here in the U.S. and take advantage of what it does have to offer and the things that are attainable to us. I started reconsidering maybe it is time for me to take that shift lead and maybe a managerial role within Burger King. But around that same time was when the conversations about DACA were happening.
It's the summer of 2012. President Barack Obama just announced the implementation of DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, a policy for children known as Dreamers. And for Vanesa, it was huge, because on paper, she fit perfectly. She arrived before the age of 16 and had resided continuously in the U.S. since June 2007 and had graduated from high school. She checked every box.
I don't fully remember the day. I think I was coming back from a shift at work, and because I had been watching the news, my kids' dad was very understanding of or aware of where I was keeping track on this. And he's like, "Hey, have you seen the news?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "Well, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals has passed." And it was a moment of shock, because it's finally happening. That sigh of relief of there is hope for me to do something more than work at Burger King. So I called my dad and we had that conversation, and I shared to him that it passed. He said, "Well, what's the next step? What do you have to do?" And I said, "I have to apply." And he said, "Okay, well then do it. Apply." He said, "What's the worst that could happen?" We went. I was very nervous of going inside because as an undocumented person, I'm like, maybe this is, again, something could go wrong and I don't come back out. So with all fear and hope holding me together, we went in. You sit down, there was a room full of people waiting. Your number gets called. I go, they take my fingerprints, they take my photo, and then I leave the paperwork there. And they're like, okay, you'll hear from us eventually. And I'd say maybe a month or so goes by, or a little over a month, and then I receive my work application, my work authorization card. I cried. I cried because I held in my hand that the new opportunity to be able to do something different. Called my dad, and I told him we did it. That everything that he had worked for finally paid off. We were going to be able to do different things. That we were going to be able to take care of him because his health still wasn't the best. And he was happy, and he said, take advantage of it. Go do something with it.
With official status in hand, a whole new world of career opportunities opened up. Before DACA, she had to turn down opportunities because of her status.
I had been switching banks. So from Wells Fargo to U.S. Bank, and I started, one day I went to go cash my check at U.S. Bank, and one of the tellers is like, have you ever thought about working at a bank, just out of conversation? And I said, no. I didn't tell her reason why I couldn't, I said, no, it's never been something that's been of interest of mine. Cash my check, went on about my day. And then I had to go cash another check from U.S. Bank, and the teller asked me again. She said, have you ever thought about it, or have you thought about it since? I said, you know what? Where do I apply? Because I was finally able to ask that question and not feel that I was going to be turned down immediately. So I applied, and I got the job. I started working as a bank teller, thinking that because of my Spanish, I was going to be able to help my community.
But that wasn't the reality.
The bank was very much sell, sell, sell. You see a product, you see someone in debt, sell them this product. It stopped feeling like I was doing something for my community, and seeing many of them struggling paycheck to paycheck, and knowing that struggle. I lived through that struggle personally. So knowing that there was only so much that I could do, eventually my time with the bank ended. I thought about what I wanted to do next. My sister was working at Hacienda, and she asked me if I wanted to take some time and do a 3-month data entry with her, or at that job. And by that time I had my youngest daughter. I was starting to tap into my savings. So I said, yes, I'll go do that while I figure out what I want to do next. And so I started working at Hacienda as a data entry clerk. And around that time, Ernesto, the CEO's executive assistant, was going on maternity leave, and they needed someone to cover another 3 months. And that's when I was offered. He said, okay, well, this department needs some help. Would you like to be administrative for them? And I said, yes.
Now, Vanesa is the chief of staff to the CEO of Hacienda CDC, Ernesto Fonseca.
So he's the outward-facing CEO, and I'm the behind-the-scenes assisting anything that has to do with his office. My primary role is to ensure that everything that isn't being taken care of while he's out advocating and doing that we are handling that within Hacienda. Through my job at Hacienda, I have met a lot of people. I've never thought I'd meet. I've met Dolores Huerta, the same activist that encouraged me and was an inspiration as to when I was out there in rallies and marches. I've met President Joe Biden as well. I've been in the same spaces as Kamala Harris. As a little girl arriving to the U.S. in 8 years old, I never would have imagined my life to where it's at right now, and all the people I would have interacted with. Sitting down in the same space to take space at a table, and not only take space, but be able to share my voice and that firsthand lived experience of what our community needs are. Like me, myself right now as a 34-year-old Vanesa, I don't think I would have ever been able to look at myself as the 8-year-old and say, this is what we're going to achieve. And I get emotional because We've achieved so much. I am the proud mother of two beautiful girls, but I am the proud daughter of Wilfrido, who had a dream. And this is part of his dream. I'm proud of my grandfather, because everything that they've done, the sacrifices that they made, has made me who I am today, and reminds me to stay true to who I am, true to my roots. Sometimes I do worry about how I share my status, but then I realize that is a reason why I am here today.
Meanwhile, as things were starting to look up for Vanesa, unfortunately, her father's health was on the decline in Mexico.
Yeah, so my father, February 2024, it was just a regular day celebrating my youngest's, her last basketball game. We were out eating pizza at our favorite pizza place, and I get a call from my sister telling me, unfortunately, our dad had been in a tragic accident where he was doing handyman work, as he did down in Oaxaca, and was pruning a tree, and the branch that he had just finished pruning, for some reason, it fell on him, crushing him against the trunk of the tree. He was not going to be able to walk anymore. The branch in the tree that crushed him severed his vertebrae in a few spots, and that he couldn't move. The only thing that he could do was move his head, if barely, but the rest of his body was in a vegetative state. My fear of a call like that became reality. As DACA, though we are allowed to work here, we're not allowed to just pick up and go. We have to prove why it is important for us to be able to apply for advanced parole. And advanced parole is a process as well, all in itself, that it's not just a week's thing, it's months in advance, right? 3 to 6 months at soonest, and or longer. Thankfully, I was able to get approved to travel to Mexico. My tickets were purchased for the 17th, just so that I had enough time to be able to get my kids in order and everything, because I was planning on being gone for as long as I needed to, but also within 45 days to be able to travel with the DACA permit. And thankfully, work was very accommodating to say, take the time you need. And so I was getting ready to do a end-of-year networking class that Ernesto does at Place, and as I'm headed over there, I get a call from my sister telling me that my dad's conditions have not gotten better, that if anything, they've gotten worse, and that they don't know if he'll be able to make it any longer. So I call Ernesto and I tell him I have to leave tonight. I call my kids, I call everybody that I needed to call and tell them that things have changed. I called my cousin, I told her that I needed my flight changed, and I needed it as soon as possible. She's able to change my flight for that same night, and that's March 12th. And so I pack whatever I can, and I let my kids know that I have to go. We go to the airport, I tell my siblings, that I love them, and that I'll tell Dad that I love him, that we all love him. But by the time I get on the plane and I sit, I get another call, and this time's my sister again, and she tells me que ya no está con nosotros, that he's no longer with us. My dad passed away. It's a bittersweet moment because I get to be back home. It was the first time back after more than 25 years. It was all still so new to me, in the sense of the roads. Now that we're paved, the road up to our home, it was all paved. It wasn't what I used to walk. There were more homes neighboring by. The cemetery was full of more people. it was very different. But I did get to see my cousins who I said goodbye to, or my uncles who I said goodbye to, and I got to see my grandmother, who also helped raise me. So my time back was literally just to bury my father. Life worked that way, I think, because otherwise, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. I don't think I would have been able to leave him. But unfortunately, once I left, I had to leave my dad behind. I got back and I had to share with my siblings where our dad lies now.
DACA comes up for renewal every 2 years. For Vanesa, that rhythm has become a part of life. 6 months before her status expires, she begins preparing her renewal, getting ahead of it, trying to make sure there's no gap that could interrupt her ability to work legally. There's an application fee of around $600. There are attorney costs. And then, after everything is submitted, there is the waiting. And now, in our current political climate, that waiting carries an added layer of anxiety.
Yes, my DACA is up for renewal. It's due for renewal in August of this year. I feel uncertain because, again, my future lies on this current administration and whether or not they deem me worthy, essentially. If my application is not renewed within time, I'd have to let go from work. I'd have to use my savings to cover my monthly expenses. I'd go back to being in the U.S. as an authorized person. I won't be able to get another job because I don't have legal status. It's very uncertain as to what that means. My heart tells me to go back, but I know that is not a possibility at the moment because my kids' lives are here. And this is where they need their mom. Yeah, it means a lot of uncertainty if my renewal does not get approved in time. But it still feels very scary because of everything that we've seen has happened to many, many people. I will still need to take a U.S. citizen with me just in case. I still need to have a plan of the just in case, a family emergency plan. If anything happens where I am detained, what to do and who takes care of my children. I have a power of attorney, all these things. Those are new steps that I have had to take just in order to reapply for this renewal because of the current administration and the current uncertainty of being able to prove ourselves in this country. There's so many stories that have happened within community members. 261 DACA recipients have been detained in the U.S. during this administration, and DACA is supposed to be protected. So there's so much uncertainty.
Because her story, like so many others, is part of a larger collective experience shaped by loss, resilience, and survival. It mirrors the experiences of many in her community.
My story can resemble and reflect a lot of community members, and I see it. Though losing my dad was a very, very hard thing and not being able to say goodbye to him, I'm not the only one that has experienced that within our immigrant community. My mom experienced that. My dad experienced that. So a lot of the times we all sit with that melancholy in our hearts of the last goodbye, right? What was the last goodbye? There are so many things, even now with seeing my mom go through this cancer diagnosis and there's so much adversity that our communities face with even just trying to live in a country that does not want them here. It is important for us to continue to push forward and take in how much our ancestors, how much the folks before us, how much our own parents have pushed through to be able to continue to have this dream. And it's acceptable to have the dream change sometimes. Yeah, so it's important for me to continue to be engaged in this community, in the documented community, because it helps me understand what our needs are. And when I am in spaces with congresswomen or representatives, I'm able to share these things with them and say, this is what our community is seeing right now. And a lot of them, even our parents, are sole providers to their own parents, to their own kids, to their own siblings. A lot of us have had to take on a lot of more responsibility given this current administration. So it is important for me to stay engaged, for me to, though sometimes I have my own fears about how much I want to disclose and how much I want to be out there. It is important for me to remember my grandfather, my father, and how they also face their own fears. But staying true to who I am and true to my roots of speaking up and showing up, this is something that runs deep in my blood. And I know that my kids are seeing me too. They're watching me and they're learning. And I want them as women to learn to sometimes sit in uncomfortable spaces and uncertainty, because that's where sometimes we get our strength to continue to push forward.
Many Roads to Here is a production of The Immigrant Story. This episode was produced by me, Ashwini Chandrakant, with audio editing done by Jack McDonald and post-production by Greg Palmer. The original interview was conducted by Shankar Raman in March of 2026. Thank you to St. Andrew Lutheran Church in Beaverton for the use of their space to record the interview. This episode was made possible through a generous contribution from the Zidell Family Foundation. For more stories, visit theimmigrantstory.org/manyroads, listen live at prp.fm, or stream us wherever you get your podcasts.